Call into order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 2024. I don't know what time it is, 6:30-ish? 6:30. Oh, right on time.
A freckle packet past the hair.
Okay. So last month we reinitiated the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to do that again if we're all good with that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will also like to say a quick prayer, and then we'll get going. Father, I just thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together as a group and do the things that's necessary for our city. God, I pray that you would just help us in the decision making, that everything would be in your eyes good for the city as well. And we just lean on you for it tonight in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're reviewing the minutes. Did anybody not see them yet? If you've read them, sign off. If you haven't, you can read them and then sign off. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I second.
Who's seconding it? Arthur did.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. There you go.
Thank you.
Motion carried. All right, that takes care of our old business. Moving into new business, is there any public comment here tonight? Okay.
I would just like to thank all of the planning commission members for all of us being able to go to the meeting in Maysville to learn more, to make us a better team, to be able to serve our community. And thank you all for the time. And thank you for driving, Kenny. You did good.
Thank you very much.
So anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know I really appreciated being part of that, and I think it was good for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think it was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Me too.
I had a guy that was wanting me to write him a proposal, and I said, well, I maybe do it while we're in class, but it was they did such a good job.
Excellent,
I
wasn't
had to pay attention.
Absolutely excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Yeah.
So I didn't rank the proposal while during that time.
That was one of the better ones I've ever been to.
Yeah, I
I've
agree.
been to about 10 of them.
Yeah, those two guys are really good. They did the one I went to last year, and it was really good.
Mhm.
Well, if we can do it again next year and wherever they are, we'll try to go to that one. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, public hearing, 230 Maple Street zone change request from R1 to R2. Mr. Jacob Brandenburg is the applicant.
So, just kind of this, the procedural part of this, the best way to do it would be you open the public hearing, allow anybody for the request to speak, anybody against the request to speak, and if you all have any discussion or comments, then you close the public hearing and then you take action.
All right,
Yeah.
so we'll open the,
I think you need to each action is a motion.
okay,
Yeah. I believe is how we should do it.
so motion to open, okay, so do I hear a motion to open a public hearing?
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
A second.
Arthur, second. All right, so, is anybody in?
Take a vote.
Oh, no, I forgot about it. Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No naysayers, all right. So we'll open the floor to a public hearing. Is there anyone here that is against the zone change?
Why are you looking at me?
I'm just paying attention, so I know
I'm
whose
the
name.
only one here.
So I know whose name you're
So
on.
Jacob.
All I
Are you
heard
against
is,
me tonight? Is that what it is?
all I heard was she was coming in to cause trouble, so.
Yeah, I did. I did. No. As long as I don't have a neighbor like I had before, I'm good.
All right. So is it agreed that no one is against it in here? Okay, we're gonna take that as a yes.
So I will certify, I notified all the adjacent property owners. I did not get any response for or against the request.
I'm one of them.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't receive anything in writing or any phone calls up to this point, so.
All right.
Oh, and the property was properly posted. Mr. Greenberg let me know when he put the sign on the property, and it was there this morning, so it's been up continuously.
I
So-
checked it, it was
Yeah.
there a week and a half ago.
I was nosy.
You checked it too?
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on. I'm a woman.
That's not an excuse.
A little bit.
No,
A little
no,
bit.
no, no, we don't do that stuff. anymore.
We don't?
No, we don't. So I'll help you.
You'll have to.
So then, Ms. Lucky, are you here in favor?
Yeah, as long as I don't, it's according, I may need a fence, I don't know. We go, could that be an option later?
I would say it's an option.
Yeah, I mean, you could get a permit for a fence if you wanted.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's on the record.
yeah, we can talk
No
about that.
fence.
We can talk about that. You just come see me and we'll talk about a fence
All
if you
right,
want one.
all right.
Hopefully you won't have to worry about that.
Hopefully I won't, because I don't really want one that looks,
Yeah.
like it.
Is there anything else to be said about this matter?
I would like a second to talk about what I'm gonna do with the zone change. So basically, most everybody on the board here knows me, Jacob Brandenburg. I've been developing some properties here in the county. I've been a part of about 18 developments over the past 4 years, or going on 5 years. Not just in Powell County, but in Lee County, Wolf County area. And so I've built those properties and developed and sold them for myself. And this Green Hatton estate was an eyesore for our community. And I had the ability to purchase, pursuing all the heirs and running all that down and getting the deed signed over to myself. And so I got a book of house plans, and I've picked 2 of those plans. I just want to share that with the board. Basically, these 2 pages are what I plan to develop in those properties. And for the record, the zone change is for half of what the original Green Hatton estate was. So I split one lot and made it 2. But just to share that, that's kind of what we're going to be developing there if this gets approved.
Yeah, and a quick background on it. Jacob came in talking to me, he was interested in buying it, wanted to know about developing it and being able to build 2 houses on it. And we looked at it, it was 1 lot of record. So for him to be able to do that, he needed to do a minor plat. So he first went through the minor plat. And we thought initially that he had enough square footage to just divide it in half and have 2 R1 zone properties to be able to build 2 houses. Well, when he actually had the survey done, it wasn't quite enough for 2 R1 properties. He was able to get the one on the corner of Maple and Breckenridge. He had 10,000. It was 10,002 square feet, I think. So it meets the minimum lot size for R1, which is what's currently zoned. The other one is like 8.
The other one's like.
It's in your packet.
It's in the packet.
Yeah.
It's 8,667 square feet. So it couldn't meet the minimum lot size for the R1, so he's choosing to rezone it to R2. It meets the minimum lot size for R2. Basically, that just means it's a little bit smaller house he could conceivably build. But the truth is, the way he wants to build them, it's not going to really change what he wanted to build. And so you basically going to be able to take the lot that had one home on it before that had burned down a few years ago and be able to redevelop it into 2. So that's what he's asking for the zone change for. And I am recommending approval with the condition that you just apply for any permit, the normal permits that you would need.
Hard surface driveway.
Yes, sir. Yep, concrete driveway, concrete sidewalk, vinyl house, shingle roof.
I make a motion to accept the zone change.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we have to close the.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's
Close-
right.
close. If there's no further.
Yeah, right. Okay, so is there anybody else that has comments before we close the?
We're just changing the one property.
Just the one. The one on the corner will stay R1, and it would only affect the lot 2 of the subdivision.
Okay.
And the minor plat's all complete. He's had that recorded.
Does that have a copy of that?
It's in the, I used that as the exhibit. They have seen that.
Here's just that little minor copy. Okay, so you kind of know a copy of it. That's, this is the corner of Maple, and then this is the highlighted lot that we're changing the zone to.
Okay.
So you can pass that around.
I got the email. It's hard to see on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
I guess I could do it with my laptop for it. I did.
I meant to get you all printed copies, and it was crazy. I
It's
apologize for
been
that.
crazy. It's been crazy for me
It's
too.
been crazy for everybody, I think.
Yeah,
It's like it's a full moon or something.
yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Once, I don't know if some of the board members know this, but I also did this on 23 and 37 Strange Street, where you guys had demolition the old apartment building that was once developed by Tommy Davis. But I did the same type of action there, where I took at that point it was small 25-foot lots. I divided those into 2 bigger lots and then built 2 just moderately sized houses, 1,200 square feet. So it's the same kind of process I'm doing here.
Any other comments? All right, we'll close the.
I make a motion we close the public hearing.
Yep.
The motion closed.
He motioned to,
I
go
second.
here a second. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Ayes have it. Motion carried. Action time. Now, do you want to make that?
I make a motion that we approve the zone change for 230 Maple Street.
We have to have a
From
reason.
zone 1, from R1 to R2.
I don't have my KRS.
What?
I don't have mine either.
Mine's up in the truck.
It has to meet one of the 2 requirements in the.
What are you looking for?
The reason that we're allowing the zone change.
You have one in your office, Chris?
I've got,
Do you want, which
I've-
one are we talking
I've got
about?
it.
I've got one right
I've
here.
got it.
You have it with you?
The comprehensive plan?
No, it's the A or the B.
Yes, here, I've
KRS
got mine.
statute.
I think he's already on.
Page 27, I think, Chris. 28, 27.
Yeah, yes. There is number 3. Well, do you want me to read it out? If the property classification of which is proposed to be changed to.
There you go.
I'm reading the wrong way.
Yeah, you're on.
Oh, here we go. There it is. There it is. Before the map amendment is granted, the planning commission or the legislative body or fiscal court must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one or more of the following apply, and such findings shall be recorded in the minutes and records of the planning commission or the legislative body or fiscal court. A, that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate, and that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. Or B, that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. That the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate.
A.
Yeah. That probably makes it better than B. And it's because,
That's what's changed now.
yeah, it's because it was divided, that makes A, to me, better.
To me too.
All right, so. She's made the motion to accept under reason A. And do I hear a second? Randy? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? No nays? Ms. Brandenburg, welcome to continuing building.
Thank you.
Well, so it's got to go before the city council, the next meeting, which is the second Thursday of June. And then if they approve it, then you're good to go. Come see me about permits.
Okay.
So I can let you know the details on that.
All right. Do I need to attend that meeting as well?
You can, if you don't necessarily have to.
Okay.
I don't foresee it.
No, they've never done
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be weird if they did. Not that they couldn't, but it would be weird if they did.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Jacob's been real good. He comes in and asks questions, and we, kind of figured this one out, like what the steps were and everything.
Yeah.
And he's been proactive about it, so he's been doing really good with
Thank you. for
coming
that.
up with stuff. I think he's looking for some better opportunities around the city to try to redevelop some properties.
Well, yeah, that was one of the big things that I heard during the class that we took is, the guy from Harrodsburg, he said, you guys have a job to do, but he said he tries his best to make it so that the people can get what they want.
Right.
Help
We help them find the solutions.
Right, find the solutions. We're the ones that live here, and
Yep.
just, it's our duty to try to make sure things are done right as well. So,
Right. Exactly.
Well, also about that lot was a whole lot better too.
Yeah.
It's just eyesore will be a real deal.
Yeah, and he's been working on cleaning it up, and it already looks a lot better.
Yeah, I've kind of held off on demoing the existing foundation and the buildings that are there until I got the approval through you all to kind of go ahead with the project. But once we get started, all that's going to disappear.
It needed a breath of life.
So thank you all.
Next on the agenda, under new business, preliminary development plan review, 385 Furnace Road, McDonald's drive-through improvements.
Okay, so this isn't an actual formal submittal. They were going to, and then after I discussed it with them a little bit, I made a couple suggestions, and they're kind of revisiting it, and they're gonna formally submit. But I wanted to go ahead and give you what they've shown me, so you all would have it, kind of just get a little bit of idea what's going on. What they want to do, and these bigger printouts that I give you, this is what, basically, one of them, the first one is real busy looking, that's the existing, and the second one is what they're proposing. They're basically proposing to put in a tandem drive-through.
Yeah.
So this will help with the instances where the traffic's backing out on the road. I've discussed it with them. The contractor wasn't aware of that, but that's not what they were hired for. But we've been having some discussions between the mayor and I about how we're going to handle, because it's happening all the time. So I was glad that they submitted this, because that means we can therefore have the discussions about it. So they're trying to work through some things. So what they're gonna do is submit for a development plan. The typical process would be a preliminary development plan. You all would review it, approve it, and then there would be a final development plan. What they've submitted to me, the full packet, and I can, if anybody wants a full packet of the development plan, I can give you one. I've got one extra printed. I can give this one up. I can send it to you via email, whatever. We can print more out. This satisfies the requirements for a preliminary development plan. It's got everything in it that they would need to submit. And they're asking if they can do just a final instead of a preliminary and a final. I don't have a problem with that. This is not something we've done a whole lot of already. They're being, proactive, providing all this information. So I don't think there's a problem with that per se, if you all are okay with it. But I want to leave that up to you to make that decision. But I think they're going to solve some of the traffic issues. I reviewed it for the parking. That was a big discussion we had earlier. They have to remove some of their parking in the back to have the room for it, but it's not going to reduce their parking to make it insufficient. So hopefully this will help with that traffic issue. But anyway, that's kind of the background on it. Again, it's not a formal submittal they've made. They're going to do that probably before next meeting. So we'll have either a preliminary or final, however you want to handle it. And then I've given you the development plan requirements for reference. Kind of through that. That's kind of all I have on that one.
Okay. Well, at least they're gonna do something.
Yeah.
Of course, not our problem, but they have to be staffed for it because.
Yeah. Yeah. The other issue we had from the city standpoint is there's a crushed storm drain in the back that I feel like, I haven't seen this happen. What I think has happened is their delivery trucks are driving out over it because it's pretty substantial and it's pretty significantly damaged. So
when you have a hard rain,
it just
it's
pulls.
like a swimming pool right there. I mean, ain't water clean out to where you actually come around to drive through there.
Right. So they, in this, they proposed to replace or repair it. But after he submitted this and I had a chance to go through it and was going to talk to him about them submitting, like I was going to send him the application and all that, I brought that up and I said, I think you need to look at not just repairing and replacing it, but preventing that happening in the future. So that's what they've kind of gone back to discuss and figure out how we're going to address that. But once they address that, then they're gonna do a formal submittal.
See, that storm drain goes to the creek. Yes, so the problem is, I think when they get into it, it's not just a crush issue, it's a stoppage issue. It's like a stopped up drain in a
Right.
house
It's plugged up.
that will leak and it will go down over time.
Yeah.
And that's what it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're gonna have to go beyond just resetting a box.
Right. Right.
I think it's stopped up.
So how much of that's them and how much of it is?
Well, is that parking lot behind them that goes to the gym theirs?
They lease that
Okay, who they lease that from?
from the property, or from the guy that owns all the land back behind that.
If they, so,
All the way back to the creek.
right,
Yeah.
well then, okay, if you lease from that person is responsible for the drainage of the property, not the person who's leasing the property. The person who owns the property is responsible for the drainage of it.
Right.
So that person's responsible for that. So that's going to get into a project of, it could be easy as something as cleaning out something, but I think it's bigger than that. But also the way that parking lot is sloped, it's catching every piece of trash and everything coming off there, but it's for years has stopped up.
Right.
So it's going to be a reconnaissance type thing first,
Yeah.
and then after that, figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But, it is a private property issue,
Right.
but it is an issue of health as well. But it's the person who owns the properties It's gonna be on them.
Yeah. Well, I will say, the development plan process, if that property, and there's been some talk about it, where the storage buildings are, if that gets developed, they'll have to do a development plan on that, which would also bring into play the drainage and all that as well.
Now, the drainage very well may be blocked on the other end.
Right.
It may not be at McDonald's.
Right.
And so there's only one way to find out. The way to do that is with a camera.
Right. I've talked to Richard about it, and Richard wasn't sure where it drained to, but he was sure that was on their property.
Well,
So-
it would, by the way that property was when the truck stop was there.
Right.
And when McDonald's came in, the only way that they would go is out that way.
Down to
But
G.
going to the front,
They have to go to the road.
they'd have to go to the road.
I would say that years ago, say they did a big truck, had a truck wash there.
There was a truck wash right there.
Right there, and they drove around that, and they had actually big things where you walked around and washed you.
But remember, there was a house there.
Yeah.
Remember the house that's
So
right there?
they probably, those drains are all connected somewhere, and I'm sure that where that water come out of the truck wash, it had to go somewhere. I'm sure it went over the creek or it drained
I
out.
would say, back in the day when McDonald's was built, that they found the tie on to the drain
Just tie
and
it
just
to.
took it on towards the creek.
Yeah.
Because you had
It might never have really drained well.
because there was really no enforcement
Right.
of stormwater at the
Right.
time.
Well, I know this for a fact, they built McDonald's in '94, and we had zoning in '92. So zoning was a new thing then.
I will say no, and the reason for it is zoning being so new, and being so new, that it's always been, you're either uneducated or you're ignorant to it, and you're learning as you go, and it's still new.
Right.
I'm gonna say that it was just like, you guys do what you need to do type thing.
Right.
And,
At the most, they may have to
nobody's
do a
really at
permit.
fault,
Right.
because it's just it's a learning process
Exactly.
for a city,
Yeah.
so you can't point a finger.
No.
Yeah,
But I would say the landowner now wasn't the landowner then.
Right.
I mean, I say it's changed hands a time or two at least, probably.
I think if the guy that has it now wasn't, he got it soon after, because he's had it for a long time. Yeah. Since, I have to go back and look at it. I pulled the deeds, I can't remember the dates.
Who owns the property?
Buster Barnett from Jackson. And Fred Combs, I think they're an LLC.
It wouldn't make sense for the way the property's laid for the water to go to the front, to the storm drain, to the roadway.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and that's kind of the high spot where the drain is, but it's almost like a crater too. Like it's high, but then the drain's low.
Right, and I think they've done that on purpose to catch
Right.
everything coming to the backs.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
wherever it goes, it goes.
It's a weird.
I think it just needs a camera to find out where it goes,
Yeah.
to run through it.
Yeah, that's.
Put that on the list.
Talk to Richard about that and see where we're at.
All right, ready to move on?
Yeah.
Seems like it was.
Yeah, there wasn't anything action on that. I just kind of want to bring it to your all's attention and so you're aware when they. Oh, well, I guess the only thing on that might be, would you all be okay with me just doing a final development plan versus a preliminary and a final? Because they've kind of done a preliminary, it just wasn't a formal, like pay a fee and all that. Yes. If y'all are.
I would be, if you guys would be.
Yeah. And I think in the future, preliminary and the final to me seem, and I think it depends on the situation really, but really in most cases that would be more like if you've got a green lot and you're gonna build something totally new, you do the preliminary, conceptual, and the final when you get further down in the process. Where this is existing and they're just making a change to the existing, it probably makes sense.
Do we need to make a motion?
I would say, make a motion to allow, to only do the final, waive the preliminary development plan.
Do I hear a motion to waive the preliminary plan and accept just the final? Yes.
I'll second it.
Randy second. All in favor? Aye.
I didn't want to make that decision on my own.
Just makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Well, actually, the quicker they get on to that, because, I don't know if y'all been out there before, I've been clean to the Belton Parkway, and you can't even get turned in out there. I mean, it's actually a danger.
It is. The whole thing's dangerous.
It is,
Yeah.
very dangerous.
Yeah.
I've been caught out there too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You end up having to pass in the turn lane, you got
Yes.
people coming in the turn lane to turn into the food court, and it's a mess.
Well, again, I'll say this one more time, just because that they have to be staffed for it. I mean, for it to work.
Right.
I mean,
Which they are pretty quick most of the time.
most of the time,
They
they're pretty
move the
quick.
traffic pretty quick.
But that just means they gotta move 2 lanes at the same time. So, I mean, I think it's a great improvement it
Yeah.
needs to have,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but, if the staffing goes away, it'll just go back to the way it is. All right. Moving along, action item, creation of technical review committee.
Okay, so there should be in your packet a handout on the technical review committee.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much in the training, if we talked about this very much. I've talked to one of the other planning directors from Anderson County. Some of the other jobs I've done, there've been TRCs involved with, typically what they do is look at plats, so subdivision plats, development plans, and potentially zone changes, but usually not. Only if it was related to a development plan, so a zone change and development plan together. So the TRC is really, it's not individual members, it's not an appointment like the planning commissioner, the board of adjustment. It's not that the mayor appoints them. It's basically the people that are already out there to do the jobs that we would ask them if they would want to participate. So it's like the 911, I've got the list. It would be myself, the planning commission chair or representative of the planning commission. If the police wanted to have input, fire, EMS, 911 coordinator, the fire department, water, sewer. Basically, so if there's a new subdivision plat, so somebody came in and wanted to do a 20-lot subdivision, and they submit their plans, this group could either physically sit down around a table and discuss it, or each could review it and provide comments. And so that would be the preliminary review. Or well, the TRC would actually be before they submit the preliminary plat or development plan. And then those comments, everybody's comments would be the conditions of their approval, basically. So they, whatever, if the fire department says, no, this turn's too tight, you're gonna have to change the geometry on this road, then they would have to make that change for it to be approved. The TRC is basically looking at it from technical aspects and practical aspects, like how will this change in the land affect the ability to provide services, how's it gonna affect the flow of traffic, those kind of things. And with the development plan, it's kind of the same thing. It would be, we would review it for, is it in compliance with drainage, landscaping, lighting, those kind of standards? And does it meet the zoning requirements and all that? Basically what it does is it adds a little bit more technical expertise. It's, I'm not an engineer, I'm not I've had a lot of kind of jack of all trades kind of experience, but I don't have a lot of specific experience. I can't speak with authority on, what the fire department needs, what the police department, 911, all that.
I'll give you a perfect example. Is like if somebody comes in with a subdivision plat and they want to put their fire hydrants at the end of the cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
And they do it all the time in
Right.
Powell County. And people
Right.
don't understand that. The reason that you don't do that is because it makes it a dead-end hydrant.
Right.
You put them in leading into the cul-de-sac. There's 2 reasons for that. The main reason is you don't put a dead-end hydrant in is because it catches all the silt and everything. A hydrant that when it was put in was getting 800 gallons per minute out of it is now getting 200 gallons per minute, which makes a difference when you're fighting a house fire, pulling from a positive water source. Second reason is you want a fire hydrant leading in from a cul-de-sac for your fire department, your apparatus to lay a line to the structure in. Not stopping the flow of speed, if that makes sense, of getting where it needs to go. If you have a dead-end hydrant, which my son lives at Beach Fork, he has a dead-end hydrant down there. Dead-end hydrants are supposed to be flushed monthly to keep the silt and everything. There's no telling what that gallons per minute comes out of that hydrant. I guarantee, because it's on the downhill side toward the reservoir, that it's very, very low, and that affects your insurance. If it, I mean, to me it would.
Yeah.
To me, I would want the maximum flow of that hydrant to protect my property. Well, they're not getting it. I can guarantee you that. So that's an example right there of like the fire department saying, "Hey, it says right here you've got hydrants at the end of the cul-de-sac. You can't have that. Here's why." And they also say that it's like in Lexington when we would fight with builders in Lexington. They want all the property they can get to squeeze in for property, so they make the streets more narrow. Well, you can't, because the fire apparatus and all this stuff is so wide. You can't have parking on certain parts of sides of the street for things like that. And then you have to have all the different people, storm drains and stuff like that. Everybody comes together. It's like a think tank. It's a unified think tank.
Exactly. You're making my point better than I ever could. It's that kind of conversation that needs to be had at the earliest stage of the development.
Once you do it once or twice, it's easy after that.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's easy as can be.
And so I basically how this would work is what I'm asking you all to do is to basically bless it by saying, yes, let's go forward and create this. The way it would work is if that's the will of the commission, then I will make the contact with all of the individuals. Basically, this list that it could be more than this, but this would be the minimum we would want. I'll make the contacts with everybody and say, listen, we've created a technical review committee. This is what the purpose is. That's kind of why I went in and typed all this out. What the duties are for the plats and for the development plans, and then what the procedure would be, and how what their time commitment would be to it.
So it's
in and you can attest to this. It's in their best interest to participate because they get a say in how it's developed. And from a public service, public emergency management, all that standpoint, it gives us the ability to say this is the quality product we want in the city. This would apply to any new residential subdivisions, commercial developments, industrial developments, all of that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So let's go back to our previous conversation of McDonald's. If we had an empty yard and they were going to build a McDonald's, then these guys would think tank it.
And admittedly, this will add a step to the development process, but I think the payoff in the long run for everybody, for the developer, whoever's going to own the property later on, and for the city and everybody involved, this is going to make things better.
So these people will be like volunteering?
Basically volunteering.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a submittal 1 month, they don't have to get together. And really the way it works is they don't all have to get together. What we would do is the developer would have to provide digital copies and a certain number of paper copies, and then I would distribute them kind of like I do with you all. But the difference would be they wouldn't have to get together and vote on it. They could simply submit written comments or verbal comments, and I would compile all that, and then that goes into the case and into the. So then when it comes to the planning commission, I would have a staff report like normal, and I could say 911 says this, fire EMS says this, the Stanton Police Department says this, and then you all would consider those comments before we would approve a subdivision plat or development plan. So what that does is that takes a lot of the technical requirements off of me and off of you to understand it and let the experts weigh in on it. But it gives us so much more ability to make sure things are getting built the right way, and not just the cheap way.
So I agree, it sounds like a great idea that we need. What is the probability of us using this anytime soon?
Well, it's going to be the frequency that we have new developments. Well, not necessarily new developments. This McDonald's thing would be a great test run of it. if you all approve it and I can make contact with everybody, when they submit, I'll try to make that happen the first time as kind of a trial run and so. But I think the more we do it, the more people are involved in it, this group, that the more they'll want to be. And then the word gets out, and I think it makes us more attractive for development. We're developing things that are going to make the whole city more cohesive and better working.
So if we would have had this team, when Homestead was built, they would
Exactly.
be fire
You
hydrants.
wouldn't have that problem.
All the issues that we've dealt with Homestead would, in theory, should not have been a problem.
Let me caution you on something though. When you have certain people who are helping, you may have to fact check some things sometimes. But the simple fact is that if someone says, well, I think it should be here, I don't know, or something like that, you can't go by that. Or I think a street should be so wide from curb to curb.
Right.
No, you have to go and then you have to fact check it and look it up. You can't just say, I think it should be this way, because that won't.
Right, well, and another thing, we're working on updating our regulations, and part of that will be, we need to really update our subdivision regulations, and this group can help with a lot of that too.
Sure.
You know, we could submit that to them and say, what do you think about these regulations? So I think it would be a benefit to have that group, at least as if nothing else, as a mailing list. But kind of to your point too, it would all come back to me or whoever's in my position, and it would kind of be on that person to do the fact check, and if something doesn't sound right, to maybe follow up or look a little deeper into it. So I mean, there is some checks and balances to it a little bit.
Right, because the example given that I gave, because I mean, for 38 years, I've been exposed to the fire service.
Right.
So I know that stuff. There's some things that people are not gonna know. There are some people that don't know that that's a dead end hydrant.
Right.
That are on the volunteer department. I am not knocking them at all
Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
We need them.
But
they may not know that because they're not exposed to the building side of it, to that side of it at all. Like with Lexington, when I would be going as an officer on an engine company and knew I was going with a dead end hydrant, I'd tell the second engine to catch me another hydrant, because I would not take a dead end hydrant.
Right.
Because I'm not getting the water I need. So you may have someone saying, not know that something needs to be changed on that plat that we're looking
right,
at.
right.
Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's not because they just may not know.
Right. But even in that case, I think we're going to do better by trying, and even if we make a few mistakes, especially ironing out, I think we'll figure it out.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll learn. There'll be a little bit of learning
We
curve.
gotta
to
break
it.
a few eggs. You know?
Right. But hopefully this will help. And nothing else, if nothing else, maybe in that case, if you happen to be in the room and said, hey, wait a minute, somebody said, oh, this is what it should be, and somebody else knew, wait, at least there'd be a discussion.
Discussion's good on that.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah. And I mean, we can always figure it. If I don't know the answer, I'm pretty good at figuring out where to find the answer. So, I mean, that's
what I was getting back to.
Yeah.
We have to fact check stuff too,
Yeah.
Well, as you going along and you develop the system, I would hope that you would get the KRS, any laws that are dealing with any of these kind of,
Write it all down as you go.
and get those in a book and say,
Mhm.
all right, here it is. So
Yeah.
the next thing that we do like that, then there is the law.
Yeah.
So somebody can't say, well, it needs to be 28 feet here and 15 feet here. That, you've got to go by the law.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we create a technical review committee.
That's it.
All in favor?
Thank you. I'll get on it.
Get on it. My daughter says on it, doesn't it? On it. All right. Next action item, hiring of a building inspector.
Always fun. There's been a lot of discussion about having a building inspector and the importance of a building inspector, and I'm thankful that Ruth is here, because
Yes.
Ruth can attest to this as well. I've actually had a few contractors suggest this. Actually, it was a contractor that first suggested it to me, to have a local building inspector. I should clarify. For commercial and industrial buildings and institutional, anything that's like schools, churches over a certain size, which I don't think we have any that are over the size that would trigger it, the state inspects those. So
Places of assembly.
places of assembly. Basically, public or semi-public, the state inspects those. What this would be for would be residential and possibly some commercial. I think maybe, I don't know if they just automatically do all commercial or there's ever a local commercial inspector. I'm not real sure about that. But this would kind of incorporate residential inspection. So it would be for new home construction, additions to existing structures, and then say if somebody was going to totally gut and remodel a house, they would need an inspection. And this is where I'm going to let Ruth make her.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to. It's been 2 years, and I finally am going to have the proper lines that my property should have been in the first place. My property lines were changed. Are
Well,
you
we're
talking about
talking
that?
your
You're
house
just the house
your
itself?
house
Okay,
itself.
I'll go to that too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But anyway, my house I found, when I moved from out in the county, my priority after my husband died was to, reduce my expenses. So my house, I wanted something smaller. I wanted something that was gonna force me to get rid of stuff. I found the size of the house I wanted, and I can show you my electric and gas bills. My electric and gas bills are higher. My house is 836 square feet. And my electric bills, gas bills are higher than my friend that has a house that is 1,300 square feet. I would,
And why is that?
because, and that's what I was getting to, I don't think there's 1 ounce of insulation in that house. When I bought the house, of course, it had all the sheetrock up. Looked nice and pretty. Well, you know what? You cover up a whole lot of things when you don't have anything inspected. You don't have the electrical inspected, the piping's not inspected, insulation's not inspected. Nothing is inspected about what's going on. So I have ended up, even my doors, I have not, I came home from, in fact, to come down here and talk to the mayor about some of my problems. I got home and my bathroom door was setting down on the floor. I thought, what the heck is going on here? They didn't nail it in. They didn't nail it in. That's the tip of the iceberg of what happened to my house. I feel like I was taken in by the sheep to slaughter because I did have my house inspected. I had a state inspector. I had my house, the title research. I did everything I could have done within that short time frame. And you can't see a whole bunch of things that are already covered up. It looks pretty. Well, pretty doesn't get me gas and electric bills that are within reason for the size of the house I bought. And I'm going to push for a building inspector. I will push every single month here. I'll push in the city hall. I'm going to be the squeakiest wheel everybody has ever heard. And y'all getting to know me a little bit, and you know I'm telling you the truth. Because this has absolutely got to change. This city should not allow people to be sheep to slaughter to unscrupulous builders and unscrupulous people that are selling real estate around here.
Well, that's always been a problem. It's a community that's always been shade tree construction of some sort. Now, there are good construction and bad construction, but we also have to look at how much do people have to invest in the construction itself. Was the construction done by the homeowner? You know, was it done by a friend? Of course, it was not inspected, of course.
It was not.
And there's not a lot of people that know that a 2x4 is not a 2x4
That's right.
in dimension.
Absolutely.
And so there, you get into that kind of stuff. So I agree about a building inspector, but a majority of this community has never been inspected unless it's had to be by a state inspector.
Can I clarify that too?
Sure.
A home inspector is not a building inspector.
Right.
He is a individual contractor that's took a week-long course just to roughly inspect your home. He doesn't, he is not legally obligated to inspect the walls, to make sure that all that, he can't do any of that.
Home inspections are related to the transfer of property from one owner to another. and they are a negotiation tool, the inspections,
Points out stuff
between,
that he can see.
between the buyer and the
He doesn't
seller.
want that at all.
And
All we did was
so,
in a building inspector.
if your deck isn't built to code, the home inspector might note that, but there's no change required.
Yeah.
So that building inspector can't see when the drywall's covered up.
That's exactly
Well, the
it.
home inspector can.
No, excuse me, the home inspector
Yeah.
can't see. The
Exactly.
building
That's what I'm
inspector,
saying.
because we have stages on building inspection.
Exactly.
You know, we have, you know, the plumber has to be his electrical.
Well, from the foundation, the footers inspected first,
Everything.
the block,
But
the
it's,
framing.
but it's never been that way
No.
here.
And you know what? We need to change it. And as I said, I'm the squeakiest wheel this town has ever seen. And you know what? I'm part of this city now. I live here. I've only lived in the city for 2 years. And I love this little town. And this should not, what happened to me should not happen to the people it's happened to before, the people that it's happening to now, and the people to come. It's gotta be stopped.
Having a building inspection program protects, you know, if I build a house and it's a junky house and it falls down on me, that's on me. But if I build a junky house and I sell it to somebody else, that's on me. So as a city, by adopting a building inspection program, what we're doing is protecting the future owners and the visitors and guests and children of the people who might build the junky house. And I don't even mean that, you know, they're not doing it on purpose. It's a way to, for one, to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the community, which is the whole reason behind planning and zoning. It's also to preserve property values. You know, if we can ensure that buildings are being built to the Kentucky Building Code, which the first step would be that the city would adopt the building code. They have to do that first. Once it's adopted and we have a building inspector, then the building inspector will inspect to that code. We're ensuring that there's a minimum standard of safety and structural integrity, and that basically reflects in the property values. You know, people, when they come in and they're looking at buying a property, and they can look and say, oh, there was a building permit 2 years ago, and here's the inspection schedule, and it passed this and failed this, but then it passed. That gives people confidence in what they're buying, and that goes a long way. But the conversations I've had with two of the local contractors and also somebody who called from out of town about a property out in the county and said, he starts asking me, I said, whoa, wait, where is this? And he told me the road, and I said, wait, that's out in the county. I said, you're gonna need to, contact the county judge executive's office. And he said, well, what about planning and zoning? I said, the county doesn't have planning and zoning. And he says, well, what about building inspection? I said, the county doesn't have building inspection. And he said, what?
Yeah.
And this guy was from out of state.
Yeah.
And he said, that's crazy, you need to have building inspection. And this is a builder who would be subject to being inspected, saying that we needed it. And that's, like I said, also two of our local contractors have said the same thing. They would be the ones that would be subject to the inspector, but they also see the value in having it. So I think that, and then, I'm sure Ruth is not the only person in the city that has had the same problems that Ruth has.
And I want to assure you, I'm not doing this just for me. I'm not on the Board of Adjustment just for me and what happened to me. I see that there's a need for everybody in this city. We all need to have equal protection from unscrupulous builders, just plain and simple, to the fact. And besides that, if we have a building inspector, there's going to be permits for that, and that permit process is going to be paying at least part of that person's wage and salary. So it's not going to be that it's going to be a big drain on the city. We're going to have happy homeowners like me. I'm happy to be in Stanton anyway, but let me tell you, I've done a lot of fighting in the last 2 years. But anyway, I still love Stanton. There's so many good people here. I'll fight for every single one of them.
So what I'm asking basically is the blessing to put a proposal together to city council about.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, now, Jacob was saying there's a difference in a home inspection and a building inspection.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, in Ruth's case, which one would have,
She has a home inspector.
See,
Inspect her
when
property.
I was buying the property,
Buildings
yes,
for something being built new or remodeled.
yes.
Yeah.
So the stages of remodeling her building would be inspected as, so she was speaking on her insulation in her house. There's a state statute for what R value has to be. And the building inspector, as it was being remodeled, would have inspected that section of that remodel and said, yes, it met code, you can go on to the finish, which would have been hanging drywall, laying floors, painting, etc. But since it was just a home inspector, her house was inspected after the fact. It was already remodeled, on the market, ready to sell and for her to live in, or so what she thought.
Yes.
So
So-
why didn't he, how could he, the home inspector, would okay everything, cause it looked
He
good?
can only,
you can't see
he
it.
can only
It's not
know
right.
what he can see.
Right, he can
It's-
only inspect his
it's-
visual, it's like a visual inspection, only what he
How
can
can you do
see.
something about that?
That's a
Because
completely
it's
different
not
thing.
his job.
The-
We need a building inspector.
The building
for-
inspector we're wanting a building inspector at the stage of building up, remodeling and all that. The home inspector is basically from when it's sold from person to person.
Yeah, I understand that, I understand all that. So basically, there's nothing that Ruth could do right now about her house.
Other than spend the money to remodel herself.
See, even my flooring, it's, I love the flooring, I love the color of it, it's that new stuff and everything slides around real easy so I can move furniture wherever I want to. Problem is, it has I think 20, 30 year, lifetime guarantee. Some of them are 40, some of them are lifetime.
The flooring,
Yeah, the flooring,
she's
yeah.
got like a waterproof vinyl plank
Yes,
flooring
that's what it is.
That's,
And the real big thing is, it has a really good warranty, good lifetime. But there's one word in that guarantee that's 2 letters and is huge. It's if. There, it's installed correctly. My flooring is already separating and breaking and all that. It's all gonna have to be replaced.
I bought the house at 450 Washington Street, corner of Lyons and Washington. Not an ounce of insulation in the exterior walls at all, none whatsoever. Built in the late 60s and none whatsoever. So
So if somebody today bought that house and wanted to flip it, they could replace the drywall and not put any insulation in it, put it back just like it is, and the next person would have the same problem.
Exactly.
If we had a building inspector, the building inspector said, no, you have to put insulation in there. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
accountability.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
It's really important, and as I said, this is not just my problem. It's happening to people long before me, and it's gonna continue happening to many people long after the Lord takes me home.
Well, I think we've talked about it enough to
Yeah.
believe that all of us are pretty much in favor, but I need to hear it. Do I hear a motion to have Mr. Cheney, staff, put together a proposal to give to city council to hire a building inspector?
Make a motion.
I'll say.
All in favor?
Thank you so
Unanimous?
much, everybody, I appreciate it, and you know what? I'm sure Stanton will appreciate it too. It's good for all of us.
Yes.
Alright, let's see, consideration of the draft zoning ordinance.
Did everybody get a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Yes.
And I didn't print more copies. I can do it real quick if we need to, or the summary even. We can go through the summary, whatever. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you all. Where to go from
So
here?
basically, if I remember what I read, is just, there's really not much changes, it's more definitions, it's,
A lot of it is me trying to tighten up the language to make things either more streamlined in some cases, more to clarify things in places. And the best example of that is like with drive-throughs. The zoning ordinance doesn't have the word drive-through in it anywhere. So we have a lot of businesses with drive-throughs. We need to know what zone districts they're allowed in and what they're not. So I in the draft, I tried to clarify that in a way that made sense with the type of businesses that normally have drive-throughs. Now, we do have drive-throughs in places that would not conform with our existing ordinance or my proposed ordinance, and we can deal with those down the road. They could kind of be considered non-conforming, some of them are technically illegal uses, but may have been permitted in the past, so we're gonna have to deal with those case by case. That could be one of those things where if they come in to expand, we can say, hey, we need to look at the use. If they don't come in to expand, maybe they just exist as they are. But I've also, pointing that out, I've tried to go through it and not make changes that would drastically change the existing character of the zone districts. A lot of it is adding things that, okay, so our zoning ordinance is from 1992. So there's things, businesses that have come into existence that didn't exist in 92. There's things that existed in 92 that don't really exist now. So I've tried to clean that up a little bit and have things make a little bit more sense. The best example of that is short-term rentals. They weren't a thing in 92, they are now. We have a standalone ordinance for it, but it allows them as permitted uses, and my proposal is that they would be a conditional use and go before the Board of Adjustment. The way the ordinance is written, it almost does that, but it doesn't require them to go before the Board of Adjustment, but it imposes these conditions that then I would have to turn around as the enforcement officer and enforce. But if we make it where they have to have the conditional use, then they go before the board can then tailor the conditions, because some situations, some of them are fine the way they are. Some of them might need extra parking, if it's a bigger, has more units or something like that. So there's some changes like that I've made where I've added in short-term rentals. Accessory dwelling units is something that we don't have. So like a mother-in-law apartment, I've allowed a provision for that. That's something that people typically do want. We have at least one or two that I'm aware of. We just need a way to be able to allow those in areas that we want them. I have very recently cleaned up the manufactured home chapter. I have some stuff on that I probably didn't print out for you all. I gave it all to the Board of Adjustment. But basically, what I want to change with the manufactured homes is the way it works now is if you want to put a single wide trailer in Hondo's trailer park, you have to get a conditional use permit. And what I want it to be, and I think this makes more sense, it goes back to the training question that I asked. And he said, you need to change the regulations. So since the training a week ago, I've been trying to get this to make sense, is that the mobile home park would need a conditional use permit. Each home in it would be considered an accessory use to that. And so when they come in, they wouldn't have to go through the conditional use, they would simply have to get a zoning permit and provide their VIN and their location in the park. That's what Carmen needs for the PBA to be able to assess it. And so that seems like the most reasonable requirement to impose on them to be able to place it in the approved park. But the park has to be approved, it has to be in compliance. So that's the big change I'm proposing for the manufactured homes. I've cleaned up the definitions for modern definitions because in 92 they called them mobile home parks and trailer parks, and they don't do that now. It's all manufactured home. And a trailer park now is actually called a manufactured home land lease community. And when you put that in a paragraph 3 or 4 times, it gets really hard to keep typing it out. So anyway, most of the language, like you said, I've gone through and I've tried to modernize, streamline, clarify. It's not a lot of drastic changes.
So it didn't look like to me you were trying to put a halt, or we were trying to put a halt to anything that's currently going on.
No. Let's see. I added a lot of definitions: electric vehicles, electric vehicle infrastructure, that kind of thing. We don't have it. We didn't have anything for wind or solar. I added some definitions in medical facilities. This I need to go into a little bit more, but medical marijuana is going to be legal next year, so I put language in there to address where that would be allowed and how we would regulate it. Because we don't want to get to the point where we can't just throw our hands up and say, we're not going to touch it. Because if we do that, then what's going to happen is next year, the year after, somebody's going to come in and want to put one in, and we're not going to have any regulations to address it. But we can't tell them they can't have it necessarily, like any other business. You can't say you can't do it because it's not in our regulations. You have to make some kind of provision for it. So in lieu of having to update our ordinance on the fly 2 years from now, I thought it was better to go ahead and kind of put it in and address it. Now we still may have to amend it depending on how that market goes and how things play out, but at least we've got something in there to start with. You know, I felt like that was important. I'm trying to think, there's something else like that. There was the medical marijuana, and there was another thing. It was kind of like that, where it was, we don't really have it, but we could potentially have it. I put in a chapter for telecom, a chapter for lighting. I put all the fence stuff in one chapter, alternate energy standards, so wind and solar. And the
So there is something for wind and solar in there now?
Yeah, and it's, there was a model solar ordinance I adapted, and it's really more for like residential. So, and we've already had a few where people have come in and got rooftop solar. I don't have it, I give them a zoning permit and say, but if somebody wanted to put a wind turbine, like a stand-up, it's just basically something that says it can't be so tall it'll fall on the neighbor's property if the wind blows it over. Things like that, they have to be secured. That would be another thing where if we have a building inspector and they were installing something on the roof, the inspector would inspect to make sure it was secured to the roof, didn't cause structural damage, that kind of thing. Typically, they provide, all of them have provided me engineering drawings, because the solar companies do that. That's something they do on their own. Because they don't want to put an array on somebody's roof and then it collapse through and, you know, into somebody's bedroom in the middle of the night. So they protect themselves, but, yeah. But if we have those regulations in place, again, we have the ability to say, this is, you know, this is our standards. We can adapt them as time goes on as we see the need to, but it seemed to me like we just need, if nothing else, to get them going and have a placeholder and be able to work from that. Some of them are a little bit more than a placeholder, obviously. The telecom was pretty important. The other big change from I've moved some stuff around from supplemental district regulations. I basically put things in different places so that I could go to one chapter if I'm issuing a permit for a new house, and all the stuff that applies is in that chapter. It's not 3 different chapters. I didn't want to do that, but I thought if we do that now, we don't have to do it in the future. It just made sense to condense things. Added some stuff about grading because we had a question about that. So the way it is now, if you do any land disturbance, you have to get a conditional use permit. And so I made a minimum, if it's less than 45 cubic yards, it's a zoning permit. If it's over 45 cubic yards, it's a conditional use permit. And if it's in the floodplain, it's always a floodplain permit. So that I think helped clarify things a little bit. We had a conditional use permit last month for grading, and it potentially didn't need that. It wasn't that much material. So it's a lot of things like that. Hopefully it'll help people be able to do things without having to go through a full-blown conditional use permit or something like that. I'm trying to think, I don't want to sneak anything. I want to make sure you all are aware of anything that has any kind of impacts. The parking. Okay, this is what I put in for the parking, the table, the 10.1A and B. I want to change all that. And what I want to do in the short term is take Berea's parking from their zoning ordinance and use it for ours. What we had in our current zoning ordinance, all the parking standards for commercial and industrial is you have to have one space for 250 square feet of gross area. The problem with that is the CPA doesn't need as much parking as a fast food restaurant needs. So that it's one standard for all commercial, and that just doesn't make sense. So I took standards from another ordinance that I found. But when I looked at the McDonald's project and I was trying to make sure they weren't losing too much, I said, I'm going to look at what our proposed parking standards and see how that would affect McDonald's if it was approved now. They would have had to have added twice as much parking. So I was like, that doesn't make any sense for McDonald's. It's basically 15 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. McDonald's is 4,700 square feet. That means they would need 60 plus spaces. They have 30 something. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And especially now, if you think the way things have changed since COVID, where people aren't going in and sitting down in fast food as much. It's mostly drive-through, it's mostly pickup. So really, even like what I'm going to propose from the Berea might be a little bit much for a lot of restaurants, but I think that's more reasonable. The Berea was like one space per 3 seats. in the restaurant. So I went in and counted what McDonald's had. They have 66 seats in the restaurant. That would mean they needed 22 spaces. They currently have 30-some. So that's a little bit more reasonable, I think. So without doing a whole lot of research into it, Berea's a little bit bigger than us, but kind of comparable in the area and the type of stuff they have. So I thought in the short term, until we can put a little bit more thought into it, I want to replace what I've suggested here for the individual standards, replace it with Berea standards. That's a kind of a big change I wanted to make into what I've already given you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I've made changes to the manufactured home stuff that from what you have. But it was what I kind of explained about making the individual homes accessory use in a conditional use for the park. And then I just cleaned up the language and definitions so they match the statutes now.
So are you having to change it again before you present it, or?
Well, I'm telling you all this now. If you're okay with what I've given, I want to propose to make the changes I've just explained. And I can give you, I swear, I meant to print it out for you all, and I ended up doing it. Like I said, I'm drowning in a sea of paper.
Do I have it here, Chris?
Yeah, if you got it handy. Was that one that?
I do. I've got all the papers mixed up. There you go.
Okay. So okay. So there was a whole big discussion about fences and pools, and so I actually changed it a little bit from what I originally gave you all after the appeal hearing that involved that. So basically, what I changed there was some language in the appeal hearing that came out where there was the ordinance says swimming pools or similar structure built. And they kept saying, well, it wasn't a built pool, it was placed. So I added a similar structure built, placed, or installed. Because if we're gonna get nitpicky about the language, let's just cover it all. So if it's built, placed, or installed, that's any kind of pool, not whether it was built with a hammer. I don't know why we got so deep in the weeds on that, but we did. And then there was a question about the pool being buried in the ground and the height of the pool, whether it was in ground or above ground. So I added, what it says is above ground pools greater than 4 feet in height with a retractable removable ladder are exempt from needing a fence around it. So I added above ground pools greater than 4 feet in height as measured from normal grade to the top of the pool side. So that gives us a way to go out and say this one qualifies or not qualifies based that it's above ground or in ground. That was a little bit of a clarification. And then we had a big question about, because it talks about retractable and removable ladders. And so I just added that to be in compliance, a pool must be secured at all times when not occupied by the owners of the pool, and pools with retractable or removable ladders shall be retracted or removed when pool is not occupied by owners of the pool. So that way, 'cause nothing in any of the ordinances talked about, it said it had to have the ladder, but it didn't say it had to be removed at any time. And then it says the enforcement officer shall have the authority to waive this requirement, considering in extenuating circumstances. I changed that to the Board of Adjustment. So it would be me making the decision to say you don't have to have these things. It would be the actual board. So basically they would get a variance for that. And that way it wouldn't be a single person making the decision, it would be the board making the decision. The board has the authority to do that. So I just clarified that was another big thing that was kind of a big part of that appeal. So the pools were kind of the first change that we started making above what you all have. And then the parking standards, I'm basically asking to replace what's in there, the numbers, just the numbers, not the language in the parking chapter, but like the numbers for the different types of uses with what's in there with Berea's into it. And then the other thing was the manufactured homes, which we talked about.
Yeah, it sounds like the parking will be a little bit easier on the business anyway.
Yeah, like I said, you
From
know,
what we have.
if you're a CPA, the one space per 250 square feet doesn't make sense anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're a barber shop, that doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you're a fast food restaurant, then that's not nearly enough. So what we have doesn't work for anybody. But this will kind of help us going forward be a little bit more fair in the parking.
All right.
Anyway, sorry, I can talk and talk and talk about it. If you all have specific questions about specific things, I can answer them, or if you want to discuss anything in it. If you all came across anything and have suggestions to make changes, I think we could potentially you could potentially adopt it and recommend it to city council with whatever changes that I can make it. Or if we need to discuss it more, it's all up to you on how you want to handle it.
So I take it that the Board of Adjustments was in agreement with.
The update committee has basically, we've been through it for a few
Yes.
months, and the update committee's gone through it, and other than, and tonight, we talked about the changes that I just went through with you all. With the pools, the parking, and the manufactured
Yeah.
homes. So the update committee, Board of Adjustment has discussed it.
Okay.
I have one question. On these above-ground pools, if they were higher than 4 feet, and they have a stationary steps, would they be required to have a gate?
Okay, so the way it reads, so a lot of them, what I've seen with a lot of them is it'll be an above ground pool and they'll have a deck with steps and a
Right.
gate at the bottom
Yeah.
or at the top. The way it reads is, all private swimming pools or similar structures built, placed, or installed for the purpose of holding or containing water, blah, 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 shall be protected by a fence at least 4 feet high with a self-closing lockable gate to prevent unauthorized access. Above ground pools greater than 4 feet high as measured from the normal grade, with a retractable or removable ladder or a self-locking lockable gate blocking the stairs, and all pools smaller than 100 square feet and 18 inches in depth, kiddie pools, shall be exempt from the requirement. So what that's saying is they either need to have a fence, or if they're 4 feet high and have a gate or a retractable ladder, they don't have to have a fence.
Yeah.
Now, the big difference is, I think that one of the ordinances says something about covers, and we've taken out the provision that you could cover. Yeah, the nuisance ordinance says, currently, the nuisance ordinance says, any swimming pool or similar structure must be covered or completely enclosed, including a gate. And we've kind of all discussed it.
Yeah.
There are different types of covers. Some covers are for safety, to prevent people from falling in it. Some are to keep dirt and leaves and things like that out, and they do not prevent someone from falling in it and drowning. And actually, and this is my personal opinion, I'm going to lead out with that. Covers to me seem more dangerous than not covers. I would rather fall into a pool that's not covered as opposed to one that is covered, because I can swim.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I could necessarily untangle myself on a cover.
Yeah.
And I don't want to find out if I can or not.
Right.
Now, that doesn't, a toddler falls in that can't swim, either or is dangerous. And the pool and the cover might prevent them from drowning, but there's no guarantee. If it's not a cover that's intended to
Be safe.
prevent them from going into the water. If it's just a cover to keep out leaves, they're going to get tangled up in the ground. So,
From what I was reading about that, they said too, especially children or, us being small, they can get underneath something more than what, an adult would, or whereas an adult would probably bring the whole thing down.
right.
So they can be very dangerous too.
So we discussed it and decided as a group to leave out. Well, I left it out and we discussed it and decided to not include covers as a provision for that. It either has to have a fence or has to have a gate or a removable ladder.
So this is a tough one for me because I have experience with this.
Yeah.
Clay City, small child in an above ground pool. Rescued the child, couldn't get the child back, CPR or anything. Child was traveling from out of state, visiting. I was working for Wells Ambulance Service. And child was still in the water when we got there, couldn't believe it. And this is just my opinion. I believe if there'd been a cover, that the child would have been alive. And this, because this was in October, it was during the weekend of court days.
Yeah.
And so that one kind of strikes home for me.
Right. And
Because I wouldn't have had to, I you know, that's kind of one of my demons, you know, when you can't get a child back and stuff like that. So, I personally, for children, when it comes to covers and stuff, I would be for it, but I'll go along with what anybody wants to do.
Well, but is there a way to differentiate in the language, in an enforceable way, the difference between a cover that's just,
My thing is this, is we gotta look at where we come from too.
yeah,
When it comes to money, a lot of people's not gonna have the kind of money for a safety cover.
yeah,
Yeah.
And you have to sometimes just say, you have to look at where we come from. Somebody's not gonna be able to afford that. They've been given that, you know, I gave somebody a above ground pool one time and they
if you
took
come get it, you can have it.
Absolutely, and I don't want to put that on somebody that can't afford it, and then there we've got a pool. We have to recognize where we live too when it comes to money for
Right.
people. It's either pay the bills, eat, or put a cover on the pool
Right.
for protection.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
then a child drowning, it's a terrible
It's-
thing to try to weigh.
right, and so I'm,
Well, and even the retractable or removable ladder, kids are crafty and can stack
kids,
things up and climb.
kids, this child, they climbed up.
Right, right. So, I mean, you can do everything in the world to keep them from doing something like that, and they'll find a way to do it. You can't protect everybody from everything, but you can, you know, we've got to try to figure out the best way we can.
Right.
Okay, so now, do we need a motion?
Well, that's up to you all, how you want to proceed with the ordinance.
I've read it. I mean, this is my opinion again. I've read it. I think it's good. I think just to leave it to where you got the ability to add stuff, because all it was a verbiage change
Right.
to make it more
Right.
newer.
And we can go back and revisit sections and update them. What's happened in the past is there've been whole new ordinances passed, and then the original document's not been updated. And so, like, the first thing I had to do was go through and find all the old amendments, and that was the first changes I made, was incorporate those. But then I had to go back and look at them and go, do they still make sense now? So we can do that. We can amend a chapter at a time or a section at a time later on down the road. We can add chapters. Like, I wanted to get a landscaping chapter in, but I couldn't do the research, so I just hadn't had the time to do it. And I would like to have a chapter, and that would be more for like commercial developments, like, you know, what's your screening requirements, what what makes sense, like.
Why don't we just, I mean, if everybody feels comfortable with it, why don't we just go ahead and accept it? Amend what we need to, work on what we need to, because all the main stuff has been covered.
Yeah.
The majority, because the other stuff is kind of miscellaneous.
Right.
And then we can amend it.
And we're gonna come up with things.
And there's gonna be things like
As soon as it's totally legally adopted by city council, we're gonna see something that we missed.
Sure.
That's just, you know, like every day I look at it and go, oh, I need to change this. So,
Okay.
Have your
Motion.
if you're gonna do that, can we, okay, so my suggestion, and this is, if you all are okay with, adopting it as is with the changes to the pool language, the parking standards, and the manufactured home language. And if you all will look at it before we do that.
I feel like we talked about it enough.
But this is what we talked about tonight with the update committee and
Do
went
we
through.
have a copy of it?
I didn't make I made
That's okay,
copies and
you
I
can
thought
do
it was
it.
for you all, and then I gave it, we discussed it, and everybody took theirs.
Is that in the email? I don't remember seeing
Can I
that.
have a copy?
She can have mine,
Yeah, and I
because
can-
I can get another.
I'll-
You're more than welcome to have it.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, I make a motion to adopt it with the parking, pool, and manufactured home language, as is an amend for future.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ayes have it.
The next step will be, it'll go to city council, and then for it to be a passed ordinance, they do 2 readings. So there's still a little bit, they may want to change things. And there's still a little bit of time for some discussion too. So, you know, if you all think of things, if we come up with stuff between, you know, obviously before that second reading, we can probably still incorporate it. I'm gonna try to stop making changes, because I'll do it every day. Because like I said, I find stuff all the time.
In fact, what we've decided to do was get a book that as we come across things and that we find things that need to be changed, to put them in a book so we can review that at least once a year
Yeah.
and pick out what is the largest priority and make those changes and do it instead of just setting a book on a shelf someplace and not using it. That's not what that kind of stuff is for. It's to help all of us.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're gonna give us an update on certificate of occupancy?
Oh, okay, real quick, in the ordinance, it talks about certificate of occupancy, and I was always a little bit hesitant to do that, when I do permits, because in my mind, a certificate of occupancy means that a building inspector has signed off on a final inspection and it's safe for occupancy. But really, the way the ordinance reads, it is for zoning compliance. So I have changed the permit form to have a spot where it says, call for final inspection, and there's a checkbox for final inspection passed or not. And then, so if somebody comes in to add on to a house, build a new house, fence, sign, anything, when I've got the number on there, they're supposed to call and schedule a final inspection. And this will take place, I've sent out 2 applications for that. But what they'll do is they'll call me, I'll go out and look and just verify that what I approved on the permit is what they built or whatever. And then I will issue them a certificate of either compliance. If it's like a fence or a sign or something like that, it'll be a certificate of compliance. And if it's a house or structure or something, it'll be a certificate of occupancy. Now, if we get to the point of having a building inspector, that'll have a little bit more meaning to it, because I can sign off on zoning, but the building inspector will sign off the final inspection. Then they get their certificate of occupancy. But that way, then we've got some verification that, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff I've issued a permit and I've never went back. I mean, like when I'm out, I look at stuff and see, oh yeah, they built the fence where they said they were going to. But this will be a formal, hey, call me, I schedule it, I go back out, I do the final inspection, sign off on it, give them a copy. That way they've got something that verifies that what they did was okay. And that way there's a little bit more checks and balances. There won't be any additional fees or anything like that, but it's a little bit more accountability, partly on everybody's side, my side and their side, but that way we're not letting things fall through the cracks. They built something that wasn't approved.
So if they didn't do it like that, you approved it, they would have to go back and redo it?
Then, yeah, they'll either have to redo it or we'll have to figure out what the solution is at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read it. It looked good, because you talked about floodplain, yes or no, and different things. So
Yeah.
looked good.
Cool. Thank you.
So we don't really need to do anything about that. It's just a.
That was more me just letting you all know. That's
Yeah.
just that's something I kind of want to get that out there. That's another thing, just another part of the process, the procedure that's going. I don't know that it's ever really been done, but
Okay.
it's in our ordinance and we should have been doing it all along. So.
Well, my opinion, if we continue to do things to help people get what they want, then of course I'm all for it. You know, as long as they're trying to do something that's within our scope, our rules.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. So we're bypassing the rules of order.
Yeah, I'll come up with something better by next month.
Okay.
I couldn't do it.
So not that you've not talked enough, but I better report.
Yeah. Did I give you a copy in the packet of the
I think so.
monthly report? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. And attached to that should be the permit report and the code enforcement. There wasn't as much new code, there wasn't really a whole lot of new code enforcement. But we had a few permits. Most of that down at the bottom is, I've started putting in, if I do research on a property, I've started documenting it by putting a case in, and then I attach my results to it. So like if I have to do deed research, if I have to look at if it's an allowed use or something like that, or like basically that all got started because I got a request for a zoning verification from a company for a property that was being sold, and I wanted to make sure that got captured somewhere. That way if somebody down the road's like, hey, can we get a copy of that? That it was attached in the system. So I've started putting those in, so they'll show up and it looks like there's more permits. There's no fee for those, that's basically just me kind of documenting what I do. And then I also, I started keeping a book of zoning interpretations and parcel research. So if I do parcel research on any property, even if it's kind of a minor thing, I've been typing up real quick, here's the deed, book and page, this is the address, here's the owners, and this is my conclusion on whether it's a legal parcel, lot of record, you know. And so that way, again, you know, a year from now, somebody comes back and asks me about something, I don't have to do the research all over again. I can, and I've got a little table of contents, and I can flip to it and go, oh, yep, here it is. And I can, you know, if I need to go back and revisit something, it's real easy to like change things, but I'm kind of saving myself work down the road. But also for posterity, you know, if something 10 years from now, somebody comes in and goes, why did you approve this? Or why wouldn't you approve this? Or I've got more documentation for it. So, I was just telling you that if you look at this permit report and see all the research, that's what that is. It looks like there's a whole lot of permits, and there's not nearly as many. So. There were more the month before that. We had 3 fences. There's another solar permit that's not showing up for some reason.
A what?
I had 2 rooftop solar.
Oh,
It might have been from the month before. I think maybe I already approved it. So maybe that's why it's not showing up.
This Power Shell Incorporated, that was in front of Hardee's.
Yes. Yeah. So that that was a fun Monday morning. Ian Morton calls me and says, "Is there any way we can make this guy put something up to keep people from driving over the wall?" Okay. So I go out there and here's the car sitting over the wall again. So I wrote him a violation notice because there was some other stuff going on there. And I actually went in and talked to the guy, and he had already called somebody and was trying to get prices on, you know, some kind of barrier or something. So he's working on it. He hasn't gotten it yet. But this happens too many times. I mean, I know 3 offhand personally, and everybody else has said they know of a few. So it's kind of an issue. So he's addressing it. It's not been fixed yet, but we're hopefully. My suggestion was signs, basically a sign that just had a big visible arrow that pointed you toward the road. Because I was afraid if they put anything in the ground, like if they put bollards or like a guardrail or something, if somebody put it, they're actually going to lever the wall out and actually compromise the wall more than it already is. And I think part of the problem, Ian thinks it happens in the morning most of the time. He's going to go back and look at the reports, but he hadn't got back to me on that. But it seems like it's in the morning when the sun's coming in and people are pulling out of the pumps, and it just looks like they can go straight out into the Hardee's Drive, and it's mostly people from out of town, so they're not familiar with it, and they just drive over the wall. So we were hoping if we put something up high enough where it would visually stop them and divert them, that would help.
Yeah.
So we looked at a few different options. But he had already priced something and maybe even had it ordered. So I was going to wait and see what he did. And hopefully that'll prevent that from happening back in the future.
I did have to explain that to my car insurance company.
Well, it was fascinating watching pull the car off of it onto the record.
Yeah.
Because that one was at an angle.
Yeah.
Most of them go straight off, but that one was actually kind of like this. And so when they were pulling it off the wall onto the record like this, the car was going to tip like that. And me and Ian were both like,
Goodness.
here it goes. Anyway, I've got this.
do I hear a motion to,
I make a motion to adjourn.
yes.
I second it.
Thank you all.
All in favor?
Anybody want to go back cooking?
Aye.
Well, you got no big